The nighttime fog enveloped the abandoned Sunshine toy factory like a sinister shroud, while the wind howled between the rusted machines. The metallic smell of blood, mixed with the sweet and nauseating aroma of melted plastic, invaded the air. In the shadows of the production line, small footprints moved alone across the dusty floor, leaving red trails that glowed under the dim light of the external posts. "Ha ha ha! You think you can stop me?" The diabolical laughter echoed through the empty corridors, followed by the metallic sound of knives being sharpened. "I am Chucky, and tonight, all of you are going to play with me, forever." Velma nervously adjusted her glasses upon discovering bloody footprints on the assembly belt, while Daphne screamed, seeing a red-haired doll jump from the shadows, brandishing a gleaming knife. Fred tried to maintain calm while organizing the clues, but even he swallowed hard when he realized that all the factory dolls had the same murderous eyes glowing in the dark. "Scooby! Shaggy! Run!" Fred shouted, but it was too late. The sound of dozens of little plastic feet running after them already echoed through the corridors, accompanied by macabre laughter and the noise of blades cutting through the air. Mystery Inc. had just met their most dangerous adversary, and he wasn't human. The sun was slowly setting over the small town of Millfield when Mystery Inc.'s van stopped in front of the rusted gates of the Sunshine Toy Factory. The imposing structure rose against the orange sky like a dark castle, its broken windows looking like empty eyes watching any unwanted visitor. "Man, why do all the places we investigate look like they're from a horror movie?" asked Shaggy, trembling as he observed the chains hanging from the gates. "Can't we investigate an ice cream shop in the morning for a change?" Scooby shook his head vigorously beside his friend. "Rhea, Raggy, I want ice cream too." "Relax, guys," said Fred, getting out of the van with his usual confidence. "According to the mayor, this factory has been abandoned for only 6 months. How scary can it be?" Daphne elegantly exited the vehicle, fixing her red hair in the wind. "Well, Fred, maybe the fact that 3 people were attacked by dolls that walked by themselves last week." She raised an eyebrow. "The hospital said the victims had stab wounds, but they insisted it was the toys that attacked them." Velma, already with her magnifying glass in hand, was analyzing the surrounding terrain. "Interesting. Look at these footprints on the ground. They're too small to be adults, but too big for children. And this dark stain here." She pointed to a dried puddle near the entrance. "It looks like dried blood." The night wind brought a strange aroma, a mixture of burnt plastic, rust, and something vaguely sweet that made their stomachs turn. The trees around the factory swayed, creating dancing shadows that seemed to move independently of the wind. "All right, gang," Fred clapped his hands, trying to keep the group focused. "Let's go in and find out what's happening. It's probably just someone trying to scare the residents to buy the land cheap. Or," Shaggy swallowed hard, "it's real killer dolls that want to turn us into mincemeat." He hugged Scooby tightly. "Scoob, promise me that if I die, you'll eat my remaining Scooby snacks?" "Okay, Raggy, but you're not going to die." Scooby licked his friend's face, trying to calm him. Daphne rolled her eyes, but smiled affectionately. "You two are impossible. Come on. The sooner we get in, the sooner we solve this and can go home." They approached the main gate, which was ajar despite the chains. Fred pushed it slowly, and the rusted metal emitted a sharp groan that echoed through the deserted area. The factory's inner courtyard was even more sinister than the facade. Machines covered by tarps spread like sleeping ghosts, and the smell of mold mixed with chemicals grew stronger with each step. "Look at this." Velma pointed to a fallen sign on the ground. "Sunshine Toy Factory, where children's dreams come to life. How ironic, ... Suddenly, a metallic noise came from inside the main building. Clang, 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 as if something small and heavy was repeatedly hitting the machines. "What was that?" whispered Daphne, instinctively moving closer to Fred. Shaggy was almost fainting. That's the sound of dolls sharpening knives. I saw a movie like that once. First they make that noise, then. He made dramatic gestures in the air, imitating stabs. Calm down, Raggy. Scooby covered his own eyes with his paws. Fred turned on his powerful flashlight, illuminating the main building's entrance. The glass door was cracked, and through it they could see undefined silhouettes scattered across the entrance hall floor. "Those aren't silhouettes," murmured Velma, adjusting her glasses. "They're dolls. Dozens of them, scattered across the floor as if they had fallen from the production belts." The wind picked up, making pieces of paper and plastic fly through the courtyard like dancing ghosts. Somewhere inside the factory, a music box began to play, a distorted children's melody that sounded more haunted than cheerful. "All right, gang." Fred took a deep breath. "Let's go in through the main entrance. Stay together and ... Crash! The sound of shattering glass came from the second floor. Everyone looked up and saw a completely destroyed window, with shards still falling in the courtyard around them. "That's a sign," shouted Shaggy. "A sign to leave. Now. Immediately. Without looking back." But before they could move, something rolled through the broken window and fell to the ground with a dull thud. It was a doll. A red-haired doll wearing striped overalls, holding a small toy knife that gleamed strangely in the moonlight. The doll didn't move, but its plastic eyes seemed to follow the group's every movement. "Hello, guys." The voice came out low and hoarse from the doll. "Want to play?" The group's collective scream echoed through the empty courtyard, while everyone backed away from the fallen doll. Shaggy jumped into Scooby's arms, who in turn tried to climb Fred like a tree. It talked," stammered Daphne, pointing to the toy that remained motionless on the ground, but with those unsettling eyes that seemed to follow their movements. Velma, overcoming the initial shock, approached cautiously with her magnifying glass. "Interesting ... look, gang. This doll has speakers built into its chest. It's probably remotely controlled." She pointed to small, almost imperceptible holes. "Someone is playing with us." "Remotely controlled?" Fred regained his composure, helping Shaggy and Scooby down from his shoulders. "So there's someone around here who can see our movements." Shaggy trembled like a leaf. "Okay, we solved the mystery. It's a robot doll. End of story. Let's go." "Not so fast." Daphne crossed her arms, analyzing the situation. "If someone is using technology to scare people, we need to find out why. Maybe it's a scheme to depreciate the property value." Scooby sniffed the air around the doll. "Our mom. It smells strange, like old blood and ... He made a disgusted face. "Blood? Blood? Blood?" Velma crouched down to examine the toy better. "You're right. There are dark stains on its clothes, and that metallic smell ... She frowned. "This is very strange for a simple prank." Fred illuminated the building's facade with his flashlight. "Right. Let's go in systematically. Daphne, you stay with me analyzing the ground floor. Velma, Scooby, and Shaggy, you check the administrative office." "Oh, sure." Shaggy gestured dramatically. "Splitting up always works in horror movies. What could go wrong?" "Raggy is right." Scooby shook his head vigorously. "Whenever they split up, someone disappears." Daphne touched Shaggy's shoulder affectionately. "Relax, you two. We'll all stay on the ground floor and maintain visual contact. If anything happens, we scream." They pushed the cracked glass door, which opened with a sharp hiss. The factory's entrance hall was even more disturbing inside. Dozens of dolls were scattered across the marble floor, some upside down, others with limbs in unnatural positions. The emergency lighting flickered intermittently, creating shadows that danced across the walls. "My God," whispered Daphne. "How many dolls are there?" Velma began counting mentally. "At least 50, just in this room. And look, ... She pointed to the conveyor belts that snaked across the ceiling. The production line was running until recently. There's fresh plastic in some molds. Fred examined the control panel near the entrance. The machines were turned off just a few hours ago. The gauges are still warm. He pressed some buttons, and part of the lighting came on, revealing the true extent of the factory. What they saw made them swallow hard. There weren't just 50 dolls. There were hundreds of them, all identical to the one that had fallen from the window. Red hair, striped overalls, and those eyes that seemed to follow any movement. They were positioned in perfect rows along the main belt, like little soldiers awaiting orders. "This is ... bizarre," murmured Daphne. "Why would someone make so many identical dolls?" Shaggy was almost hyperventilating. "Because it's an army of killer dolls. They're going to surround us during the night," and he began dramatizing an epic battle between humans and toys. "Calm, calm." Scooby waved his paws, trying to calm his friend. Velma approached the belt that still had some drops of a dark red liquid. "Fred, come see this. There's blood on the production line." She followed the trail with the magnifying glass, and it's not a little. Someone was seriously injured here. Daphne pointed to a poster on the wall announcing, "Special Chucky line, limited edition for collectors." Below, in smaller letters, "Warning, product may present personality defects. Not recommended for children under 18. "Personality defects?" Fred read over her shoulder. What kind of company puts a warning like that on toys? Suddenly, the music box they had heard in the courtyard started playing again, but now much louder and coming from all directions. The speakers scattered throughout the factory played a distorted version of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," but in a minor key that sounded sinister. "This is giving me chills," admitted Daphne, rubbing her arms. It was then that Velma noticed something that made her blood freeze. "Gang ... count the dolls in the front row." "Why?" Fred approached. "Because when we entered, I counted 12 dolls in the first row. Now, there are only 11. Everyone slowly turned to look at the row of dolls. Sure enough, there was an empty space right in the middle of the formation, as if a little soldier had abandoned its position. "Maybe you counted wrong?" suggested Daphne, but her voice sounded uncertain. "Velma never counts wrong." Fred swallowed hard. A sound of small, fast footsteps echoed through the side corridor. Tap, 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 as if something the size of a child was running on tiptoes. "That's a doll moving." Shaggy grabbed Scooby. "I knew it. Knew they would come to life." "Exactly." Scooby jumped into his friend's arms. "Let's go." But before they could move, a high-pitched and childlike voice, but loaded with malice, echoed through the corridors. "Hello, new friends. Did you come to play with me? I'm Chucky, and I'm going to teach you some very fun games." The laughter that followed had nothing childlike about it. It was cold, calculating, and getting closer and closer. The macabre laughter echoed through the factory corridors, multiplying through the speakers until it became a sinister chorus that made all Mystery Inc. members instinctively grouped together in the center of the hall. "All right, enough," Fred shouted to the air, trying to show courage despite his voice being a bit shaky. "We don't know who you are, but these cheap tricks won't scare us." "Cheap tricks?" Chucky's voice sounded offended. "Oh, Fred, you're going to discover there's nothing cheap about my tricks. How does he know my name?" Fred turned to his friends, confused. Velma was frantically analyzing the speakers on the ceiling. Security cameras. There must be cameras throughout the factory. Whoever's behind this can see and hear everything. Daphne pointed to a small lens gleaming in the corner of the hall. "There, and there too." She identified 3 more cameras. "We've been watched since we entered." Shaggy was almost fainting from terror. That means he knows everything. Knows I have a phobia of dolls. Knows that Scooby is afraid of ... of... "What are you afraid of again, Scoob?" "Cats," Scooby answered without hesitation. "Of cats, Shaggy. Velma corrected, but I don't think that's relevant now. Suddenly, the sound of machines being turned on filled the air. The conveyor belts began moving slowly, carrying the dolls in formation along the production line. What had previously seemed like a static scene now transformed into a mechanical and disturbing ballet. "Look," Daphne pointed. "The dolls are moving with the belt." "It's just the belt, Daph." Fred tried to sound convincing. "They're not moving by themselves." But Velma had noticed something different. Fred ... "Wasn't that doll over there turned to the left a few minutes ago?" Everyone looked where she pointed. One of the dolls at the end of the line was clearly turned in their direction, with those plastic eyes that seemed to glow with their own life. "Stop looking at me like that," Shaggy shouted at the doll. "You're not real. You're just plastic and screws." To everyone's horror, the doll slowly raised a small hand and waved. The group's collective scream was interrupted by Chucky's voice, now coming from a completely different direction. "Oh, but I am real, Shaggy. More real than you can imagine. How do you know our names?" Daphne shouted, beginning to lose her composure. "I know everything about you, Mystery Inc." The voice sounded increasingly close. "Fred Jones, the brave leader who sets traps. Velma Dinkley, the brainy one who always finds clues. Daphne Blake, the rich one who always gets into trouble. Shaggy, Rogers, and Scooby-Doo, the cowardly, hungry ones who stumble upon the solution by accident." "Hey," protested Shaggy. "We're not cowards, we're cautious." "That's right," Scooby agreed. "Cautious." Velma, determined to maintain scientific focus, approached one of the machines still in operation. "Gang, come see this. This machine is injecting something inside the dolls during production." She pointed to translucent tubes that pumped a dark red liquid. "It's not paint." Fred joined her, examining the equipment. "It really looks like blood. But where is it coming from?" "From, Chucky's voice roared right behind them. Everyone turned quickly, but there was nothing there. "Gang," Daphne said with a trembling voice. "I think we should get out of here. Now." "No," Velma stamped her foot. "There's a logical explanation for all this. There has to be." She began examining the tubes more closely. "Look, the blood is coming from that reservoir up there. Someone put it there purposely." Shaggy and Scooby hugged each other, trembling. "Velma's right," said Shaggy with a tearful voice. "There's always an explanation. Usually involving someone in a mask wanting to scare people for money." "Exactly." Fred regained confidence. "Let's follow these tubes and find out who's behind." Crash! The sound came from the upper floor, followed by running footsteps. Many footsteps. Small and fast footsteps, as if a crowd of children was running toward the stairs. "Those aren't people," whispered Daphne. "They're the dolls." As if confirming their fears, dozens of Chucky dolls began descending the stairs in military formation, each carrying small sharp tools, screwdrivers, pliers, and some with real knives that gleamed under the flickering light. "Now you're going to play with me." Chucky's voice no longer came from the speakers, but from all the dolls simultaneously, creating a terrifying chorus. "And the favorite game is hide and seek. You hide, and I seek. Run!" shouted Fred. The group shot through the factory corridors, with the sound of hundreds of small plastic feet hammering the floor behind them. Chucky's diabolic laughter echoed off the walls, mixed with the metallic noise of tools clanging against each other. "Where are we going?" shouted Daphne as they ran. "Anywhere away from the dolls," answered Shaggy, who was running so fast he was almost flying. Velma, even in full flight, continued observing clues. "The left corridor. There's a room with an armored door." They turned the corner and threw themselves inside a room that appeared to be the factory's control center. Fred slammed the door and locked multiple locks, while the sound of dolls banging from outside filled the air. "We're safe," panted Fred. "For now." But when they turned to examine the room, they discovered something that made their hearts stop. The walls were covered with photos of Mystery Inc., newspaper clippings about their previous cases, and a detailed map showing all the places they had been in recent weeks. "Someone has been following us for a long time," whispered Velma. In the center of the room, there was a single chair turned toward multiple monitors. And in the chair, a giant Chucky doll, the size of an adult person, was sitting with its back to them. "Welcome to my home." The voice came directly from the giant doll, which slowly began turning the chair to face them. The giant Chucky doll in the chair turned completely, revealing eyes that glowed with intense red light and a smile that exposed small teeth sharp as razors. Its enlarged version was even more terrifying. The scars on the plastic face seemed deeper, and the striped overalls were stained with something that definitely looked like real blood. "Surprised?" The voice came directly from the doll's mouth, without electronic distortion. "I've been waiting for you for sulfur monoxide long." Shaggy fainted in Scooby's arms, who was trembling so much he could barely hold his friend. "Fred, this doll is bigger than me." "Impossible," murmured Velma, even with evident fear in her voice. "Dolls don't grow. There must be a person inside this costume." Daphne, gathering all her courage, took a step forward. "Who are you, and what do you want with us?" Chucky tilted his giant head to the side, like a curious child. "What do I want? I want to play. You've spent years unmasking villains, solving mysteries, ruining perfect plans." His eyes glowed more intensely. "Now it's my turn to make you suffer." Fred, trying to regain his natural leadership, banged on the table. "Enough. No matter who you are, we're going to figure out your trick and expose you like we did with all the others." "Oh, Fred." Chucky laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. "I'm not like the others. I'm special. I'm real." The giant doll stood up from the chair, revealing its full height, almost 2 meters of pure intimidating presence. It walked toward the group with mechanical but fluid movements, as if it were really a toy that had come to life. Velma, even terrified, continued analyzing. "Look at its movements. There are servomotors in the joints. This is advanced robotics, not magic." "Very smart, Velma." Chucky stopped in front of her. "But you're only partially correct." Shaggy woke up from his faint just in time to see Chucky centimeters from Velma. It's alive. Really alive. Your lives." In time to see Chucky centimeters from Velma. Shaggy woke up from his faint. "It's alive. Really alive." "Calm down, Raggy." Scooby shook him. "We need to do something." Fred gathered courage and positioned himself between Chucky and his friends. "Right. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to set a trap. The biggest and most complex trap we've ever made." Chucky clapped his hands like an excited child. "Oh, a trap. How fun. It's been so long since anyone tried to catch me with a trap." "You want us to make a trap?" Daphne frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It makes perfect sense." Chucky danced in circles. "You make the trap. I pretend to fall for it. Then I turn everything around and use your trap against yourselves. It'll be hilarious." Velma whispered to Fred. "He's giving us too much information. Either he's very confident, or there's something we're not seeing." Fred nodded and began elaborating aloud. "Right. We'll use the production line itself against him. Daphne, you'll be the bait. "I'm going to be the bait?" Daphne protested. While Velma programs the machines to create a giant cage," Fred continued. "Shaggy and Scooby will distract the other dolls with food, and I'll control the capture mechanisms." Chucky applauded enthusiastically. "Perfect. Simply perfect. And when you're all positioned, He approached Fred and whispered something in his ear that made the Mystery Inc. leader turn completely pale. "What did he say?" asked Daphne, worried. Fred swallowed hard. "He knows our traps, all of them. Every trap we've made in the last 5 years." "How is that possible?" Velma was confused. Chucky laughed again. Because I've been watching you. In every case, in every mystery. He pointed to the monitors around the room, which now showed footage of Mystery Inc. in action during various previous cases. You're so predictable. Shaggy was almost crying. So our traps won't work? Oh, they'll work, Chucky winked. Just not the way you expect. Daphne crossed her arms. So why are you telling us all this? What's your game? Chucky stopped dancing and got serious for a moment. Because I'm bored. All the others were too easy to scare. Adults crying, children screaming, police running away, ... He sighed dramatically. But you're different. You fight. You think. You make everything interesting. Velma understood immediately. You want a real challenge. You want to see if you can defeat us when we're prepared. Exactly. Chucky clapped again. Now you get it. Let's play for real. Fred looked at his friends and saw determination growing in all their eyes. Even Shaggy and Scooby seemed to be getting braver. All right, Chucky, Fred said firmly. You want a game? We'll give you a game. But when we're done with you, you'll wish you had chosen easier opponents. Chucky laughed with delight. Oh, now we're speaking the same language. You have exactly 1 hour to prepare your trap. After that, ... His eyes glowed more intensely. The fun really begins. Daphne whispered to Fred, 1 hour? How are we going to manage to set something up in 1 hour? We're not just going to set up. Fred smiled for the first time since they arrived. We're going to set up the best trap we've ever made. And this time, it's going to work. The footsteps of the smaller dolls stopped banging on the door, and a sinister silence took over the factory. It was time to put the plan into action. 58 minutes later, the Sunshine Toy Factory had been transformed into an elaborate labyrinth of interconnected traps. Fred had outdone himself. Modified belts, hidden nets, sliding ramps, and even a giant cage suspended in the air by a pulley system that Velma had programmed using the factory's own computers. Positions, gang. Fred shouted from the improvised control center he had set up using a forklift. Daphne, are you in the bait position? Daphne waved from the end of the main corridor, where she stood near an accidental pile of dolls that would serve as the first attraction point. Ready. And I must admit I'm excited to see his face when he realizes we anticipated his moves. Velma was hidden behind a control panel, with all the buttons and levers mapped out. Capture system programmed. The belts will direct him exactly where we want. Shaggy and Scooby were positioned near the stairs, where they had spread a trail of Scooby snacks that led directly to the main trap. Distraction trail ready? Shaggy shouted, trying to sound confident despite his legs still trembling. If he's like any other villain, he'll follow the food. And if he wants dog food, Scooby added, licking his lips nervously. Time. Chucky's voice echoed throughout the entire factory. Time to play hide and seek. But this time, I seek. And when I find you, the sound of hundreds of small feet returned to echo through the factory, but now it came from all directions. The smaller dolls had spread strategically, creating a pursuit network that would make it impossible to escape by normal methods. Here he comes, whispered Daphne into the intercom that Fred had improvised. And he brought friends. Giant Chucky appeared at the end of the corridor, walking slowly, savoring the moment. Behind him, marching in military formation, at least 100 smaller dolls, all brandishing small sharp tools and weapons. The noise was deafening, like an army of tin soldiers coming to life. Hello, Daphne. Chucky waved cheerfully. You're going to be the first to play with me. But Daphne, instead of running in panic as she always did, smiled confidently. Actually, Chucky, we're the ones who are going to play here. She stepped on a loose board that Fred had prepared, activating the first phase of the trap. Immediately, nets fell from the ceiling, capturing half of the smaller dolls. Simultaneously, the belts activated, creating a current that pulled Chucky directly toward the center of the trap. Interesting. Chucky laughed while being dragged. You really did your homework, but I did my homework too. The giant doll pulled a small knife from his pocket and cut through the nets as if they were paper. The captured dolls freed themselves instantly and resumed the chase. Phase 2, shouted Fred, activating another set of mechanisms. The floor opened in several points, revealing shallow pits that should immobilize the dolls. But to the group's surprise, Chucky and his followers simply jumped over the holes with supernatural agility. You forgot one thing, Chucky shouted while running toward Velma. I know this factory better than you. I built it. Built? Velma frowned while pressing more buttons. But that's impossible. This factory has existed for decades. Ah, my dear Velma. Chucky was now just a few meters from her. There's so much you don't know about me. Shaggy and Scooby sprang into action, throwing Scooby snacks in Chucky's direction to distract him. To everyone's surprise, the giant doll stopped and began eating the treats. He's eating the Scooby snacks. Daphne was confused. It worked, Shaggy celebrated. Scooby, throw more. But when Scooby threw the next handful, Chucky spat everything out with disgust. Blag, how horrible. How do you manage to eat this stuff? Hey, more manners. Scooby protested, offended. Taking advantage of the distraction, Fred activated the final trap, a giant cage that descended from the ceiling and should capture Chucky definitively. But the giant doll rolled to the side at the last second, and the cage only trapped some smaller dolls. Close, Chucky applauded. Very creative. But now it's my turn. He pulled a remote control from his pocket and pressed a button. Instantly, all the factory machines activated simultaneously. Belts began moving in erratic directions. Injection machines began spraying melted plastic, and the speakers began playing the music box at deafening volume. Welcome to my playground, Chucky shouted over the noise. The factory transformed into total chaos. The Mystery Inc. group had to run, jump, and dodge not only the dolls, but also the machines themselves that seemed to have gained malevolent life. Fred, Velma shouted while hanging from a belt that was trying to carry her toward a shredding machine. Your plan isn't working. I know. Fred replied while balancing on a rope to escape from a cutting machine. Plan B. What's Plan B? Daphne asked while running from a cloud of toxic vapor. There is no Plan B, Fred admitted. We'll have to improvise. It was then that Scooby, in a moment of pure panic, stumbled and fell against a control panel that no one had noticed before. The panel lit up, revealing a factory map with a large red X marking the basement. Fred, look. Scooby pointed to the panel. Velma, even while fleeing, managed to read the information. It's a map of the power system. The power source for all systems is in the basement. If we turn off the power, Fred understood immediately. All the dolls stop, Daphne completed. Chucky, hearing the conversation, roared with rage. I know, you won't ruin my fun, but it was too late. The group was already running toward the stairs leading to the basement, with Chucky and his army of dolls in furious pursuit behind them. The final battle was just beginning. The stairway to the factory basement was narrow and dark, illuminated only by flickering emergency lights that created dancing shadows on the damp walls. The Mystery Inc. group descended running, with the terrifying sound of dozens of small plastic feet echoing behind them. Why does it always have to be a haunted basement? Panted Shaggy while trying not to trip over his own feet. Why is it never a sunny room with cheerful music? Because villains don't like vitamin D. Scooby responded philosophically, which made everyone look at him with surprise. This isn't time for jokes, Scooby, Fred shouted, though he couldn't help but smile. The factory basement was even more disturbing than the upper floor. Old and rusted machines spread through the shadows like sleeping mechanical dinosaurs. The smell of mold mixed with chemicals was almost suffocating, and the sound of water dripping somewhere invisible added a sinister soundtrack to the environment. There, Velma pointed to a gigantic electrical panel at the back of the basement. the main power system. But between them and the panel was something that made their hearts stop. A mountain of defective Chucky dolls. Some without arms, others without heads, many with melted or distorted facial expressions. It was like a toy cemetery. My prototypes. Chucky's voice echoed through the stairways as he slowly descended, savoring the moment. My first attempts at creating the perfect doll. Daphne cautiously approached one of the defective dolls. These are ... old. Some seem to be decades old, because they are decades old. Giant Chucky finally reached the basement, with his small soldiers spreading out to surround the group. You think I'm just another villain in a costume? I'm Charles Lee Ray. I built this factory. Velma adjusted her glasses, frantically analyzing. Charles Lee Ray. That name sounds familiar ... It should. Chucky laughed bitterly. I was the original owner of this factory. I created the Chucky doll line 30 years ago, but then his expression became furious. My partners betrayed me. They kicked me out of my own company. They said my designs were disturbing and inappropriate for children. Fred frowned. So you came back for revenge? Not just for revenge. Chucky gestured dramatically. To complete my work. Do you know what it